I'm no longer the presenter.
No, you are. I just redid it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So
Okay, I think we're on.
okay. Great.
Can you guys hear us? Okay, they can hear us. We're good. Thank goodness. Sorry, guys.
Ready?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So we're going to start Module 2 of selling the HydroStat system. Learning objectives for this module. The first thing that you should be able to do is understand and list the individual elements of the HydroStat system for SIBO and for fructose or lactose intolerance, and there's some difference in the test procedure as it relates to carbohydrate malabsorption as opposed to SIBO. Shorter test time is the primary thing. You should be able to list the most common needs of the doctor. They're expensive. Materials to do actual testing on yourself, family members, friends to practice with. There are 6 challenges. There was a separate box, a smaller box within the box, the big box, that had 6 challenges. It had 2 each of glucose, fructose, and lactose. It also had 10 disposable mouthpieces and an extra T assembly. That extra T assembly is there so that you can, the rest of the training materials, including the instrument, the carrying case, the physician manual, the 100 mouthpieces, try to keep that bag closed because you're selling that to the doctor, and the 50 reagents. That'll be the first thing that you sell. That'll be the first one that you sell. So please keep it in good working order. The representative was also included. The role easier for the rep in their learning curve. To improve it, please let me know. And we talked about keep order because training manual, it has 5 sections. It has an introduction. That introduction is our brochure. Then a 4-page brochure. Then it has the primer, information on SIBO, on orange fructose intolerance. Manual is also photocopied and provided for you as a reference in your representative training manual. And I will say now that after putting together this training and looking at all the documents that we have, we've already begun reorganizing the physician manual, and I will have to everybody by Friday the guts for the reorganized, updated physician manual. So all you'd have to do is really just, and I'll also have a copy for your representative training manual. So by the end of the week, you'll be able to have the latest information. Then there's a section on ordering HydroStat and supplies. And then the training module PowerPoints. Of course, any of the training modules that we do afterwards, they need to be developed before they can be put in. But everything in the future, once we've got it fully fleshed out, will include all the different training modules. So what's our desired outcome? In my opinion, the best case scenario is that the doctor purchases the unit and regularly uses it. It's great to sell an instrument, but it's even better if we sell instrument and a lot of reagents afterwards, because we're going to get more money. We're going to have a better system in place. So that difference in how we are approaching this is going to be half of HDC, half of me, and very few of the people that they sold to actually would slam a deal, and then you get nothing on the back. So I want to try to encourage lines, the duties are to sell, then install, in servicing, and then on using it. To do a little bit of a review, this is really important. The common causes of chronic GI symptoms are many. So you could have IBS that symptoms. You can have fruit. Bloating, gas, these kinds of things. Very often the doctor just work approach. This doesn't work out. If you look at the next slide, what the doctor often tells their patient is, you know, stay away from dairy, see how you do. This was a blog excerpt from the way is no longer active, but the information is as raw as it was then. From double-blind studies our laboratory group conducted at the University of Minnesota, 1 out of 3 people who self-diagnosed themselves as severely lactose intolerant were actually able to digest 15 grams of lactose, which is just over a cup of milk. So they had thought themselves to be severely lactose intolerant. They weren't. So the only way that you can really identify this is by testing. And lactose intolerance and fructose intolerance, there is a spectrum of how severe that illness is for them. In other words, like he's saying here, people think they're severely lactose intolerant, but actually when we tested them, they could digest a cup of milk, no problem. No symptoms were created from it. So there are other people, though, that if you give them half a cup of milk, they are running to the bathroom. They have all kinds of symptoms generated from that half a cup of milk because they have severe lactose intolerance in reality. So testing is the best way to know for sure. By the way, when you do a HydroStat test, the diagnostic criteria is to have a 10 parts per million increase of hydrogen in the breath compared to a fasting baseline. Now, that's diagnostic. It means you have it. But the person who has a 10 parts per million increase after challenge of lactose is not going to have the same clinical problem as a person who has 100 parts per million increase over their baseline. That person is probably going to have serious problems if they have anything that has lactose in it. So that's important to know if you're the doctor, if you want to give the best results to your patient. And it's something that you should keep in mind just because this is an important area to, you can further put some icing on the cake with the HydroStat sale. Now, if you go to a doctor and you talk about, the fact that breath hydrogen testing is a 30-year technology and it's really important to diagnose lactose intolerance, the doctor often will have a very different opinion because what's the big deal? I mean, it's lactose intolerance. So if you get some gas, if you're farting, if you have some diarrhea, it's because you ate lactose. Big deal. There's nothing wrong with the patient that is serious or really needs anything immediate. And you know what? That's why it's good enough for me to just tell my patients stay away from milk and see how you do, because the diagnosis doesn't really matter that much. That's their attitude a lot of the times. Same thing with fructose. If you told them, well, doctor, let me show you this interesting study. 38% of patients that met Rome 2 criteria for irritable bowel had fructose malabsorption causing their symptoms, and by following the fructose restricted diet, which really wasn't that difficult for them, they all improved and stayed improved long term, 12 months. Wow, that's great. Okay, so I'll just tell my patients to, if they're bloated and gassy and diarrheic, I'll just tell them, go ahead and stay away from fruit. So that's what's probably going to happen. I don't want to spend $4,000 and fight with the insurance companies and complain, my patients complaining, blah, blah, blah. But with the SIBO, they need to do something. So the thing is, they don't know about it like they should. They've probably never diagnosed it one time in their life, even though they see it on a daily basis. They just don't realize they see it on a daily basis. But they do know, the doctor does know that they often get dissatisfactory outcomes with their recommendations and therapies and treatments for irritable bowel syndrome. They're aware of that. They're often aware that their best efforts to treat IBS fail. They don't know why. So you're going to come with them with the why. But really clear that it's the SIBO portion that matters. I'll talk about it a little bit more. So what are some things that you can say? Because the doctor's going to say, a common question. Yeah, sure. He knows all of you. Everybody who's on this call has doctors that, if you show up and they see you, they say, hey, how you doing? Come on back, They'll say, what do you have for me today? And so you want to give them something that's going to be pretty provocative, and you know your prospects really well. But if you're going to see a doctor that doesn't know you really well, there's a few things you might want to say. And there's variations of this, but here's some suggestions. Oh, what do you got for me today? Well, I got something really great, particularly if you see a lot of GI and IBS issues. Do you? Yeah, I see them all the time, all day long. Okay, great. Now you've established that he sees them. Then the next step is going to be talking about his outcomes. Outcomes, how are they? Are you pretty satisfied with them? Do you have to refer a lot of these patients out to a gastroenterologist? You see how this conversation can lead to the need for improved clinical outcomes. Another answer you could give if he asks you, what do you have for me today? You could say, well, something that can have a massive impact on your outcomes for IBS. Do you see much IBS or chronic GI problems? Or have you ever wished you could have better outcomes for your IBS patients? And if you know this doctor, he's going to openly and honestly tell you his experiences with IBS. Having done this many times in doctors' offices about just IBS specifically, not necessarily this technology, but it's extremely common that they get poor outcomes. They're acutely aware of it. They absolutely know it because they see it every single day. Okay? So the vast, vast majority of doctors that you talk to, if they're conventional physicians, are going to see IBS as one of these conditions that is, it's a pain in the neck. They don't get good outcomes. Now, if you're seeing a doctor that is a functional medicine practitioner or an alternative medicine practitioner, they might get really good results with their IBS patients because they do more than your typical primary care conventional approach would do. So the key features of the HydroStat system, number one, it's going to dramatically improve outcomes. It's highly profitable. Insurance reimburses for it. It's a recommended diagnostic by the leadership. It's CLIA-waived. It's non-invasive. It's painless. It's a complete system. And we provide full staff servicing and on-report. It's pretty neat. Why? Because there's negative consequences if you don't know that you're looking at SIBO. And that requires immediate attention and a need to take action. So you really need to know what the negative consequences are and hammer those home. Every doctor that we've talked to, when you really get them focused on that, they buy. Okay? Now, that's why SIBO is a key, because lactose or fructose intolerance are just symptoms. So what are the negative consequences of SIBO? Gut damage, which can be severe, bacterial translocation, which leads to other comorbidities and additional disease, malnutrition, long-term problem, other things that I didn't list there, inflammation, immune system activation, those are all bad things. This is what happens with SIBO. So there's a very strong motivator for the doctor to say, you're right, I need this, especially when you start talking about how prevalent SIBO is and which SIBO-associated conditions he's seeing. Boy, it's just a no-brainer that he needs it. Oops. Also establishes the need not, okay, stronger motivator than just, okay. So the animation has not been perfected on these slides, so I'll do my best here. Physician buying motives. Every doctor, I don't know if there's one doctor that should that has a license that doesn't care about getting his patients better. Every single one of them cares about getting their patients better, is a safe assumption. And if it's not every single one, then it's 99.9%. So improved clinical outcomes is a very important physician buying motive. Profitability, very important, even though, I mean, you know, the doctors that you know and that you talk to, you can speak freely with them. If you got something that's profitable, they're going to listen to that. And very often they're looking for that. That's a lead thing. Doctors you don't know, always safer to lead with the improved clinical outcomes. But it's extremely profitable. Insurance pays for it. They usually want the insurance companies to pay for things. Then some doctors are just interested in having really good technology. They want that turns them on. It's a buying motive. So, and ease of use. You know, the easier it is to implement, the more likely it is that something is going to happen. The more difficult, and the opposite. And minimal complaints. If the doctor gets a ton of feedback from his staff and the patients that it's a pain in the butt, no, it's, you know, doctors, they're dealing with sick people all day long. They don't want to hear about, they don't want to hear complaints. And he doesn't want to be the cause of any complaints. So if there's a bunch of complaints associated with it, then I'm going to, file 13 that option. It's not going to happen. So why HydroStat? I'm going to just put all these on there. Number one, it's an essential diagnostic technology. Okay, it's the only way that you can make a diagnosis of IBS without, it's the only way you can really make a diagnosis of IBS. It's the only way you can make a diagnosis, the only practical way you can make a diagnosis of SIBO, and the best way to make a true diagnosis of fructose intolerance or lactose intolerance. And it gives you insight into the underlying processes that he currently can only guess at. So it removes the guesswork. It's awesome. Also, straightforward treatment after diagnosis, either medications or patient education, and it will definitely improve clinical outcomes. Okay? In fact, the doctor might wonder, what is the impact on my patients with chronic GI problems or IBS? It's going to have at least a 50% impact on those patients, because not every patient that has fructose intolerance or lactose intolerance or SIBO is going to be diagnosed as having irritable bowel syndrome. Not every one of them. There's a good portion of these patients that they see with these GI problems. They don't make a diagnosis of IBS, but they have these problems. With that population and the ones that they have diagnosed as IBS, you're going to have a massive impact. There's no technology for GI that can have such an impressive impact. None. It's going to transform the way they practice medicine related to GI problems. It's just going to be incredible for them. And is HydroStat profitable? Absolutely. One patient tested per day, which is our business model. I like to, when I do sales, I like to under-promise and over-deliver, because then you get a lot more credibility and residual opportunity with that doctor than the opposite. So I'm basing this on one patient tested per day, which is about 22 per month. That will generate about, if you charge $100 per test, which is it seems to be pretty good. Now that does change from friendly during this rollout. But even if insurance doesn't cover it, suppose we know that in Kansas, yeah, the insurance companies are really hard on it. They don't pay for it. So then what we do is we try to have a strategy where the patient pays cash for it, because if the patient wants it and they're willing to pay cash, how much are they willing to pay? $100 seems to be a pretty good price point for the patient, especially if they believe that they have SIBO. I want to know, my insurance isn't going to pay for it, I'll pay for it, And there's a low cost, approximately $5 in direct costs to the patient. I'm sorry, in direct costs per patient. Direct cost would be the cost of the reagent challenge and the cost of the disposable mouthpieces. Then the other costs that are associated with it would be the technician time, and that would be about it. Okay, I am challenged with my with my animation skills. Actually, I had somebody else doing this for me. So there's no regulatory restrictions on doing HydroStat. It's CLIA-waived. Why? Because it deals with the breath. There's no biohazardous waste to manage or to dispose of or to pay somebody else to dispose of. It's a level 1 Medicare diagnostic. Dr. CLIA-waived, level 1 Medicare diagnostic. I'm sure you all know that already. This is not required. What does means if the doctor is in the hospital, test. If the doctor goes on vacation, they can still run the test. the test. It could up, right? Now, there's another thing that can happen, proactively educate your patients. This is a part of the system that is new, okay? And how the doctors are going to feel about this, we'll see when you put it out in front of them. Proactively educating, we do that with a brochure. We'll get into this a little bit later, but basically you've got screening, proactively educating, then you're going to test them to diagnose, then you're going to treat them, and then you're going to retest to confirm that the treatment was successful. This is for SIBO. The system for fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance, you still want to proactively educate. Going to test. Treatment involves education. No need to retest. The test procedure, when you do it, the main difference is that when you're trying to test for SIBO, you're looking at the small intestine, which means that the effect of the challenge, the glucose challenge, will be seen within 90 minutes, pretty much. Okay, the vast majority of patients will have a response within 90 minutes. Now, with fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance, you're not challenging the small intestine, you're challenging the large intestine, which the reagent will have to go through the entire small intestine before it reaches the large intestine. So the studies have shown that peak hydrogen levels for lactose intolerance and fructose intolerance take place about 3 hours after challenge. A lot of doctors, when you tell them, yeah, it's a 3-hour process, they say, look, my patients are they're not gonna want to do it. They're gonna complain. So I don't want to even go. That's another reason why we lead with SIBO, because every patient that has these problems needs to be tested. This is what the World Journal of Gastroenterology recommends, that every single patient that has GI problems like what we're dealing with here needs to have SIBO considered, which means testing. It means that. They don't say the same thing with fructose intolerance or lactose intolerance. So what happens is, practically, if you get a patient where it's serious and they test SIBO and SIBO might be negative, if that patient really wants to know, we can go further, patient. We can go into fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance. And we have a couple of different options for how that gets implemented into the practice. Okay, next slide. In your materials, you should have a document in your physician manual that says, are your digestive symptoms caused by bacterial overgrowth? And it basically is an educational piece that, again, this hasn't been put into play yet. The way it's envisioned to be put into play is that you discuss with the doctor the need to proactively screen and educate your patients related to SIBO, because as with fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance, there is a range of severity of SIBO. It can be anywhere from asymptomatic to extremely symptomatic. That's SIBO, and massive gut damage and minimal gut damage, okay? There's a range. But the whole point is, if a patient knows that their frequent gas might be related to SIBO, and they see themselves in this education piece, they're going to ask the doctor to be tested, because most patients, their nature is to be somewhat of a hypochondriac. If they see that certain symptoms are present in their experience and there's a condition associated with it, they see that, oh, doctor, I think I have cancer. Doctor, I think I have this terrible thing. Doctor, I think I have this terrible thing. So with this, you get a chance to bring out people who probably wouldn't have, who may not have talked about their problem before, and it gives the chance for the doctor to discuss it with the patient. Is it appropriate for the patient or not? It also does something. Just figure, if you put this into play before the test is started, the doctor, of course, he's going to be trying to discuss the testing with patients. But if you have every single patient that comes in for a week read this piece, you might generate 30 to 50 people who want to be tested. What a great thing that would be. You just generated the payment, the complete payment for the device in the first week, and then you got to schedule these guys. So it can be a really powerful thing if it's used right, and I hope that this is something that you guys really wrap your minds around to figure out how to get the doctor to say yes to putting this in. It's a two-pager. The next step, or I should say the back side of the page, has a digestive symptom questionnaire which will quantify to some extent the various symptoms that a person could have, how frequently it is, and then they can even check a box that says, I would like to be tested for SIBO. You're doing marketing for the doctor. It's actually pretty helpful. We'll see how that goes. Now another thing, think also, how else could we do this besides this little educational handout? Posters on the wall that would spread that is going to be accepted by the doctor, even if it's So the next step is diagnosing. So the HydroStat instrument will measure the hydrogen in the patient's breath. Now we have the glucose challenge is there for testing SIBO. The fructose challenge is for testing fructose intolerance, and the lactose challenge is for testing lactose intolerance. So we sell these to the doctor. We also have the disposable mouthpieces, which are an essential part of the testing. 10 parts per million over fasting baseline is diagnostic of SIBO and fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance. Now, there may be some practitioners that say, no, it should be 12 parts per million, but there's plenty that say it's 10 parts per million. So my thinking is that 10 parts per million makes it a little bit more sensitive. We'll identify some people who are on the cusp, so it's a better diagnostic criteria. They will bill CPT in 1065 or negative. In addition, the doctor is going to schedule a separate appointment with the doctor. The patient is going to schedule a separate appointment with the doctor to cover the results and the treatment. Typically, as soon as after the test as possible, we'll see what their schedule is. It's just scheduling. Once they have identified SIBO or fructose intolerance or lactose intolerance, then the next step is to treat. So the HydroStat system includes leadership recommended guidelines for treating SIBO. It also includes patient educational handouts for fructose intolerance and lactose intolerance. Those are found in the physician manual and in the primer. The educational handouts for fructose and lactose intolerance are found in the physician manual, and they're in sheet protectors so they can be copied and distributed to the patients as needed. Now the doctor would bill an office code visit with that meeting, and you would want to advise the doctor to bill based on time spent with the patient. This will probably be a little mini Q&A that we'll be able to cover what codes, diagnostic codes, what CPT codes are used, and then supporting documentation. We'll have a complete package for that put in place within probably the next 3 weeks after I get back from vacation. just know that you get additional visits with your patients, so it's the profit impact is greater than just the test alone. Then the last step with SIBO is to confirm eradication. Now you're not going to do that with lactose intolerance or fructose intolerance because there's no eradication taking place. But you want to retest after treatment to ensure that the bacteria have been taken care of. So this is going to be scheduled approximately 2 weeks after the testing. And it's understood that they just had antibiotics and everything, but that's how we will know if that course of antibiotics was successful, not just symptomatic improvement. Best to confirm through testing. It's a billable procedure. Every time that patient comes in on a separate visit and does a breath test, even if it's just for a baseline and there's no challenge associated with it, they can bill for it. Okay, so that's the system. Objections that you might run into. You know, you can imagine a doctor that's practicing and he just hasn't heard about this, you know, so he says, look, I've never heard of it, you know, he's skeptical that he needs it, right? Now, this isn't really a common objection if he gets SIBO. If you can explain SIBO to him in a way that he's like, wow, then he's not going to say, I've never heard of it, therefore I'm skeptical that I need it. But it could pop up, you know. Look, this hasn't been promoted to primary care doctors. That's why you haven't heard about it. But there's been a lot of information being presented in gastroenterology circles, and you probably don't read those journals. It's a greater than 30-year-old technology. In fact, it's the gold standard for diagnosing lactose intolerance and fructose intolerance. It's recommended by the leadership for SIBO. They say this is the most important diagnostic test for it. And it has its own CPT code. I mean, basically there's so much that a doctor says, I haven't heard of it. I mean, you're going to present him with information that's based on the literature, what it shows. So that's not a likely objection. $4,000, that's too much money. And compared to what? I mean, I wouldn't say that to the doctor. Compared to what? But, you know, you don't have to buy it straight out. You can try it first. You know, if you've done a good job with a doctor, he's going to feel like, I want this. I can't wait to use it, you know. And if he's skeptical because he's been burned before, like this has happened, you know, doctors are targets, right? They are targeted by every scheme and scam that you can imagine. I live in South Florida, which is the Medicare fraud capital of the country. And every doctor in South Florida has been exposed to every conceivable scam you can think of, right? So these guys don't want to just plop down $4 grand sometimes. They say, you know what? They say, look, it sounds great, but I just don't know if this is I don't know if I'm going to get paid for it. I haven't, you know, heard of it being used here. They just feel this way. So that's why we offer the trial. They can try it. It's going to cost them a little bit of money, $395. By the way, you guys, I want your, the price point. Is the price point too low? It's not, I don't think it's going to be too high, but maybe it is. Is it too high? Do we have the right price point? If everybody says yes at $395, we're probably a little bit too low. And guess what? You get a commission, 25, 26, or 27%, or your reps will, if you get them to try it. You know, you're going to get your commission if the more you know, it's the same figures in relation to sales. In other words, if you do 1 to 4, you get 25%. If you do 5 to 8, you get 26% commission. If you do 9 or more, you get 27% commission. So the same numbers of placements apply for the same percentage, but it's a lower ticket. I mean, $395, you're going to get 25% of that, or 26% or 27%, depending upon how many trials you get that month. Now, the good thing about the trial, it's a puppy dog close. If you get them using it and they like it, they're going to want to buy it, especially if the insurance is paying for it, or their patients are willing to fork over the money out of pocket. And patients are willing to do that, but it's sometimes a little bit of a challenge to get the doctor to think outside of the insurance reimbursement box. That's your challenge. So they can try it for $395, and you can prove to them, or their own experience will prove to them, that everything you've said is true, that it's reimbursable, that they're going to get paid, that the patients are going to get better. And for $4,000, the ROI is incredible. I mean, seriously, they're going to get about $100 revenue per patient. There's approximately $10 in total costs, means the reagents, the mouthpieces, plus the tech time. That's about a 900% ROI. That's awesome. I mean, this thing can pay for itself in a busy practice in a month, and then after that, it's pure profit. By the way, we're going to give them 20 or so challenges to go with their rental that they don't have to pay for. This thing is going to be more, halfway towards paying for itself by the time the trial period is over. How long is their trial period? 30 days or a billing cycle. Okay, it's not a hard and fast number because some doctors' billing cycle is not 2 weeks. Some practices it's 2 weeks. They get paid in 2 weeks. Some practices they get paid in 3 weeks. Some practices they get paid in 45 days. And I'm okay with that. I'm flexible. I want you guys to be able to make a sale. And if you can place these trials, of course your big ticket is going to be postponed a little bit, but you're making money, and I would say there's going to be a very high percentage that will convert to sales. In addition, if they try it and they want to buy it, they're going to get a $250 credit towards the purchase price. So we're trying to put in as many incentives as possible. Keep in mind, as you're doing this, and you see a refinement that can be made that will increase your close rate, let's know about it. Let everybody know about it so that we can really, really make it go. Okay, another objection. I doubt insurance will pay. I've had so much problems with insurance, and it's really nice. Reps come in here all the time and tell me I'm going to get paid $800 per patient, and then I end up getting paid $300 for every other patient, and I invested, $20,000. This is going to happen because most doctors have this experience. That's why we offer this trial. Low risk, high reward billing cycle. Try it for $395. Let me prove to you that this works. Okay, prove it to me for free. Well, we can't do that. The company won't do that because there's too much expense involved. But we will let you do it with a very low risk. And if it doesn't work out for you, then you can send it back. Or, doctor, would you be interested in cash pay? Oh, no, I only want what insurance is going to take. But insurance is squeezing you. Your insurance reimbursements are less. And did you know, doctor, that cash pay services in the medical field are one of the fastest growing areas? About $40 billion will be spent by patients out of pocket on services that are not covered by insurance. You're kidding. I didn't know that. Yes, absolutely. Anti-aging practices that are both. They're conventional and they have a cash pay service. Very common. It's growing, growing, growing. So this is definitely something that you want to put on the table, if not to just simply plant the seed with the doctor, because he may have an objection at that point in time, but if you do it right, then he'll go and he'll meditate upon it, and he'll think, you know what, maybe I should do it this way, and then he'll move forward with it. Okay, another objection, I don't trust my staff, or my staff will complain about doing it. Okay, now, in my opinion, there's 3 sales that need to be made here. And if you can make those sales effectively, it will result in long-term success with that client. The first person is the doctor himself. Sell him. I'm sold, but I don't think you can get my staff sold. You got to sell the staff. And guess what? If you sell the staff properly, in the form of either a lunch and learn or a breakfast or just a meeting that you're able to get to because the doctor allows you to schedule the meeting, then you can explain to them, you can educate them what SIBO is. if you do a good job, every single person who's in that audience is going to be thinking that either they need to be tested, or their spouse needs to be tested, or their family member needs to be tested, or their friend needs to be tested. They're going to have people who, okay, well, where do we get this test? Right here. We want to do this. Now they're excited. They're enthusiastic. They want to do this now. Okay? So if this objection comes up, this is something that probably will have an impact. Another problem, they're just too busy. They don't have enough staff to make this work. Now, if a doctor says this, then what I would say back to him, I know I wrote not sure what to say here. Of course, you know, that was my initial thing, but the thing is the clinical need. Of course they need to do this. We just got to figure out how to make it work. The doctor wants his staff, the doctor wants his practice to be successful clinically, and the doctor wants his practice to be profitable. And we provide that in like the easiest way that he can do it. We don't have any real competition from the standpoint of other medical instrument manufacturers that have something that's as good as this. You know, you're going to have typically a $20,000 to $40,000 investment, not a $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 investment. So if you get that, you'll just have to see what you can do with it. Okay. My patients won't want to be tested. And this, of course, we know that the patients will want to be tested. You know, if they knew about the consequences of undiagnosed, untreated SIBO, don't you think they would? That's when you can break out the patient education materials and see if the doctor would even be willing to put that in play before he makes a decision. See, if you can establish a demand from the patient's side, the doctor will absolutely do it, no question about it. And even if we tweaked that brochure and we said something like, you know, this thing costs, you know, the cash pay price for it is $95 or $100, the patient now weighs in their mind, okay, if I do this in the hospital, it's going to cost me $2,500. I could do it with my doctor for $100. Heck yeah, I'd rather pay $100 for this, even if my insurance doesn't pay, because I want to know why this is. My doctor hasn't been able to help me yet, and I went to a gastroenterologist, and they couldn't help me, and I still got this problem. So I think you guys will be able to handle it no problem, that objection. Unacceptable accuracy for SIBO, 72%. Okay, so a doctor says, you know, geez, you know, this is how doctors are sometimes. They're like, geez, what's the accuracy of it? And we have those studies. Now, there's an organization of gastroenterologists that are called the Rome Committee. Every year or every couple of years they meet in Rome, and they're all the big shots, all the opinion leaders in gastroenterology. And they, you know, any kind of issues related to GI that are up, they will discuss and come up with some kind of a, you know, very proper approach towards solving any problems. So they have, and I have it, they have published their Rome criteria related to breath hydrogen testing. Methodology and indications of H2 breath testing in gastrointestinal diseases, the Rome Consensus Conference. I have this document. And basically what they recommend is breath hydrogen testing for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And one of their statements is that it's actually pretty darn good accuracy. The accuracy is very acceptable. 72% is not perfect, but compare that with the best other options. Guessing gives you 0% accuracy, which is what 99.99999% of primary care physicians are doing, guessing. So it's less than perfect, but it is the best option by far. And they compare it with the gold standard of doing the jejunal aspirate, where you have to have a procedure. They have to stick a tube down your throat after you're anesthetized and find the right part of the small intestine to extract the sample from. If they don't find the right part of the intestine, they will miss it. It's not the best gold standard at all. In fact, I just read a paper yesterday saying that the gold standard isn't a true gold standard. It's not. Hasn't been validated. And in fact, it probably is related to one of the underlying conditions related to SIBO, which is stagnant loop or a blind loop. So there's a lot of places you can go with it. Anybody still with me?
We're still here.
What are the challenges that you're talking about?
Challenge is the glucose, the lactose, and the fructose powders. If you look in your training materials, the label says glucose challenge or lactose challenge. Those are the individual sugars that will allow you to diagnose one of those three conditions.
Oh, I see. Okay. I got it. So it's what they take when they're doing the before they do the test.
Correct.
They have to come in fasting.
Yeah, they have to come in fasting.
Okay.
And then they're going to take a baseline measurement.
And then drink.
And then they drink, and yeah, they'll write down the baseline measurement, and they drink it down, and then they will measure 15 minutes later any hydrogen levels for the next 90 minutes. Or if they identify a 10 part per million increase before 90 minutes is up, they're free to go at that point.
Okay.
Most of the testing is completed within about an hour.
Who's giving him that test every 15 minutes? The tech?
Yeah, a tech.
Okay.
Whoever they decide is going to do it. So there's some decisions that need to be made so that you can train them.
So they got to pop back in there and do that.
Yeah, they'll have, basically they'll wait in the waiting room, and then I think the maximum probably the maximum that they could test would be 5 a day, unless they become really good at it. I mean, you know how it is. Once you start it, you know, at the beginning, you know, that's when you're not as good. But once you've done it for a while, you know what, I can probably do 7 or 8 patients a day if I really want to do this, and here's how I'll do it. And they'll figure out how to do it.
But if they do 2 tests on every person and they get the office visit, that's really about $270 gross.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you came up with 20,000. Was that based on just
that was
one
based
person
on
a month?
One patient a day.
test?
Yeah, 1 patient a day and 1 test. That's right. So in other words, what I'm telling and we'll have a sales calculating document that you can show the doctor that here's the number of IBS patients you see in a week, here's how many diabetic patients, et cetera, et cetera. All the SIBO-associated conditions will be there, and it'll have a factor associated with it. And then we can tell the doctor, here's what your likely test volume would be, and here's what your profit would be.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to give the doctor something that looks good, but I'm going to probably show him, no, this is really good. And then once we got it and we know what it, you know, the general experience is across different markets, then we can revise it upwards.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple more questions, Ethan.
Okay.
How long would you recommend a trial run?
A billing cycle, 30 days or 45, probably 45 days maximum, but generally you're looking at 30 days for the trial.
Okay. The next question is, does the $395 include the challenges and mouthpieces, or are they a separate charge?
That would include 20 challenges, 20 glucose challenges, and 100 mouthpieces. Now, if they want to, if the testing is going well and they want to buy more, then they can buy more, and that's also commissionable for you. One thing I'll also say is that, you know, when you do a trial, you're going to basically give them the same attention as if they're doing a sale. And as I mentioned, there's a very high probability that if it's implemented correctly, They definitely will have the patient flow. The testing will go off properly. They will bill properly. They'll make money with it, and they will buy. And you've already done all the heavy lifting. It's already done. So don't be too scared about that trial thing. I think it's going to be a very effective segue to closing on a sale.
Okay. Let's see. One of the other responses about being too busy that somebody had a comment was, tell the doctor that means you're too busy to stop taking blood pressures and listening to people's hearts and doing other routine labs.
Can you repeat it?
This person was saying was that if a doctor said that they're too busy, then they would obviously also be too busy to take blood pressure
Gotcha. Yeah.
or heart rate or perform other routine lab services.
Yeah, as a response to them. So, I mean, absolutely, you're not too busy to do what you need to do for your patients, absolutely. Yeah, you know something, that's one of those things, if that comes up, we'll see how people handle it and what's the best way to overcome it. There's probably 10 different answers that you can get.
I think one of the things that timeline.
Good
and the patient
point.
back out into the waiting area and sitting
Might be about 20 minutes of face time between the technician and the patient for the entirety of that 90 minutes. That's every single test and everything. About 20 minutes. So you figure one technician will cost you about 15 bucks an hour, maybe even less, who knows, depends on the market. But even if it's 15 bucks an hour, all you added was 5 bucks to the cost. The only difficulty there, if the doctor's like, you know something, I'm too busy. Look, doctors are people too, right? They go through divorces. They have issues at home. Doctors, what do they want? A doctor isn't like, hey, I want to administer my practice. No, the doctor's like, look, I want to treat patients, and I'm paying all these other people to administer my practice. And unfortunately, some doctors make bad decisions with staffing, okay? And they just don't know how to get out of it because they're not good business people. So, the answer for a good business person is simple. You just get rid of the bad employees and you replace them with employees that'll listen to you. Some doctors just aren't there, so that's why I put that up. The solution would be, to help them with their business and then take a bigger percentage of their income or something like that if you could put that together, but not there yet with this. Okay, there was something else that I wanted to bring up. Oh, there's going to be a video that I will be posting before I go on vacation Friday that will explain how to use the instrument, how to put it together, how to do the testing and all that, basically how to train somebody else in using the instrument. That will be available Friday, and I'll send the link over to Miriam. I'll probably upload to YouTube. Hey, I've never done it before. You got to figure out how to do it, and then I'll get that to you, Marion, so that you can let everybody who's on board know to go see it. Okay. It should be really helpful. Any other questions?
Let's see. If you have multiple doctors interested simultaneously for a trial, what is the protocol for HD Scientific for us to follow?
Well, do you mean having like a 10-doctor group practice, or do you mean 10 different practices?
Both.
Each practice is handled individually. So if it's a 10-doctor group practice and the buying decisions are made by a central buying committee within that practice, that means they're probably only going to do one instrument to start. So if you've got, it's basically you take them sequentially. Whatever individual practice that wants a HydroStat trial, they pay, they'll get it. Simple as that. The protocol is I'll also explain that in the videos. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this or not in the beginning. Currently, the price is $39.95 for the HydroStat system. Some doctors, we're not going to ship anything until we receive payment. Some doctors want to pay with credit card. There's a $100 fee associated with using a doctor's credit card to like if we use a credit card, it costs me 2.5%, so it's at least $100 off of that. So I think what we're going to do is up the price to $41.25. I don't believe that it's going to have any impact on sales, but it will cover those costs and it'll give you a little bit higher commission. So we are going to do that, and I will change all of the sales forms to reflect that and get them to you by Friday.
Sounds
Ethan,
good.
I have one more quick question.
Okay.
Do most gastroenterologists already have a way to test for SIBO?
I would say the market penetration in the gastroenterology community is probably somewhere around 10 or 20%.
Really?
Means that it's probably a pretty good market still. Yes.
Right.
Now this number I got when I first started going to gastroenterology offices in 2009, 2010. So things may have changed since then. It may more like 4 out of 10 doctors had some solution for this already in place. The ones that didn't, about half of those were interested, and about half of them were just interested in doing procedures. Procedures means scoping a patient, doing an upper GI, lower GI. Yeah, they spend all their time and make all their money in the GI lab. They don't really want to do clinicals, or if patient has IBS, they could care less. They're not. They don't want to do clinicals. They're just plumbers.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Fancy plumbers.
Thanks.
Sure.
All right. I think. Credit card may be used for the $395 trial fee. Any price change for this possible charge?
Right now, I'm going to leave it at $395. If it, remember, this is the phase 1 of our rollout. We're going to test some of the aspects of our product offering and services. I don't anticipate probably changing that, but we'll see. If everybody buys, then maybe we're charging a little bit too little, and we should up it. Maybe $495 is the price that they'll accept, and if they pay $495, then everybody makes a little bit more money, so it's a good thing. But we're going to start with the $395.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any other questions? Well, I think we're just about done, Ethan. I think this went extremely well. You all, just as a reminder, we do have another training tomorrow, same time, different link, same place. For the continuation of this, we're trying to get all of this training done this week so that we can get you out working and hopefully hitting the streets while over the next couple of weeks. So just as a friendly reminder that we do have another training session tomorrow.
You mean for HydroStat?
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what I'll do instead of making them come here. I'll focus on that video.
Okay.
And I'll upload it so that they can go watch that, okay? Because that will cover what I had intended to cover.
Okay, perfect. That's even better. Okay,
Yeah.
so I will send you the link, or Ethan will upload the video and let us know where to find it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and I appreciate your opportunity to bring this particular product to you. We're very excited and look forward to seeing what we can do with this out in the marketplace. Ethan, thank you very, very much for your time. As always, it's great with you.
Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you.
And,